Hello and welcome to ShePack. Today I'm joined by Lori Dunn, Chief Operating Officer at Optimus Technologies. And in today's episode, we're going to discuss breaking barriers in sales, empowering yourself, navigating advice, and owning your unique path. Lori, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Hey girl, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, good. Now tell us about your background and what led you into this role.
Sure. So background, started in the world thinking I'd be a teacher and then realized I didn't want to teach per se. I wanted to do something, everything is social good. That's how I was raised. That's why I wanted to be a teacher. And I was like, I want to use my talents in a different way, and got really into like global war management and pivoted that way. And then I was I was in Boston. I went to grad school in Boston, and I was like, well, this like the nonprofit government side really isn't vibing with me. It again, like it wasn't meeting that need. And I was at a few different networking events learning about do I want to be a management consultant? Do I want to be a marketer? Do I want to be this? And I went to a sales thing, and sales is a curse word for many people. So I was a little hesitant. I was like, I don't know if I want to be here. And I went to an event, and Lori Richardson was there, and she was just sitting down. I was like, hey, how you doing? Getting to know people. And she just asked me a few like really interesting questions, and then said, there's an event next week. You should come meet me. And I was like, okay. And I showed up. She said, oh, I'm so glad you're here. You have to meet the host. And I was like, yeah, who? And it was Beck Holland hosting the event. And this is like years ago. And I walked up and she was like, you got to meet Lori. She's entering sales. And I was like, I am? I didn't know I'm entering sales. And this whole like pivot, I was like, okay, thanks, Lori. And then like Lori Richardson, Beck Holland, like then I had these two women kind of as like mentors leading me in. So I like to say I'm just really lucky that I showed up to an event, and the person that was sitting there happened to be one of the kindest supporters of women in sales and what the profession is. And then she even introduced me to some, now we all know, like really heavy hitter people. And that to me, I was like, oh, I just met these two sales gals. And now years later, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, oh, I'm that girl. I got it.
You're
But
like,
throughout the
oh,
whole,
it's a big deal.
oh yeah, it's wild. I'm really grateful. And through that, then I'm learning, okay, selling might actually be the thing for me, because I like the way they were talking about sales. Like I just mentioned, sales is a curse word because that's kind of how it feels sometimes. But they were talking about it differently. They were talking about how to solve problems for your customers, how to really help your customer get better day to day, and got rid of some of that slimy stuff of it. So I was like, wow, okay, I need that, but I also like it had to be social good, right? Like my whole life, like everything was leading me to something that was that. And that's what got me into like energy and climate tech. And that built in, and I've had a few really interesting experiences of learning, okay, what is a sales process? How does this org scale from, A to B? How do we play in this range where we're going for the A? How do we map around? And then even leading to, hey, I think I want to be a leader. That's something that's kind of vibing with me. I spend of time, a lot of time mentoring folks, up and coming sales folks, usually from overlooked and untapped communities. So whether that is people of color, whether that is a LGBTQIA, a woman protected class, things like that. I spend a lot of my off hours mentoring there. And a leader told me, it's like, I think you need to lead, because that's where you get really excited. I'm like, okay. And again, Lori Richardson tapping back in. It's like, let's get you into Girls Club. And I had a leader who was amazing, AP Isa, at a company that she was my VP of sales, best VP of sales in the biz, bar none. She's amazing. And
Plug
she
in.
worked with me. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like literally, if she's ever hiring, I'd be like, anyone just go there. You can't get better support than under AP. And she helped me through Girls Club, learning how to become a leader and build that. I had my a stab, at a head of sales time, early stage, like really early, like we're talking like pre-seed stage, and then hanging out in climate community, ended up getting introduced to the founder here at Optimus, which it led me right here. And what we were looking for was kind of like that go-to-market side and kind of partnership leading through. And we're really lucky. We've had an amazing, amazing year here. A few months ago, we closed a Series A, 17.8 million, and now we're building up the team. I've got, one salesperson. I have a few more coming in for in-person interviews next week. I couldn't be more excited of this stage of growth that we're in right now.
No, that's super exciting. I think even in this economy right now, anyone talking about growth and opportunities to bring others in, super exciting. I think if I take a step back, it's interesting because a couple things I heard you say was around sometimes the negative connotation when we say sales. And it did bring me back to I started my career in sales and I remember someone saying, "Oh, are you a meat eating hungry salesperson?" And I was like, "Oh God, no, I'm not. Maybe this isn't the role for me." But I love what you said because it's true. When someone said, "Hey, do you want to come in and help them? Do you want to help customers and solve their problems?" And I was like, "Why, yes, I do. I think I can do that." And so it is interesting. One thing I have to ask this because when you said it, I was like, what is that? Global War Management. What is that?
Yeah, so it's my way to say the field that I was in.
Okay.
International development, coexistence and conflict negotiation, that it's ultimately in the cycle of wars, right? Because the mentor and advisor that I learned from pretty heavily for about 4 years was Mari Fitzduff, one of the leaders in the conflict field. And her thing, like, we're always in a cycle where it's a pre-conflict, mid-conflict, post-conflict, or recovery period. And I heavily focused on like kind of how to identify when we're getting ready to a breaking point. And I really loved deep diving into that negotiation piece of that, which is where the sales piece at first, I did think it was a curse word. It was a dirty word. I think, who says it? Scott Leese says it's a blue collar job in the
Hmm.
white collar company. Like that's
Interesting.
what he calls sales. So there are some of the negatives, but because I was in the conflict negotiation stuff, I'd already read Chris Voss because he's a conflict negotiator. Like that's what
Mm-hmm.
he does. So a lot of the works that a lot of I like to think like the higher level sales folks that I've been lucky to be learning from, a lot of the work they learn from and the way they communicate with customers, it's all about how you connect with the human and how you build that strong connection and get to know them and what they want. So you're not just pushing your agenda. And what is that if not a conflict negotiation?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, then when you said that, I was like, "Ooh, I really need to understand what that means. I need that unpacked." So if I take a couple steps back, and obviously you were in a great opportunity. Timing is everything. You were introduced to
Yes.
sales. Now, many individuals typically view their first sales job as the ultimate milestone. How can we shift this perception, or perspective, excuse me, and encourage people to see sales as more of a continuous journey?
Yeah, it is continuous. I mean, anything you do in life is a continuous journey. Anytime you set a goal for yourself and you actively work towards it, and like you chemically change the way you interact with the habits in your day, that's part of it. Like I frequently, see people that I knew 5 years ago, like, wow, you're so different. I'm like, thank God. Thank God I've evolved, and that continuous improvement. That's what I really enjoy about sales is the focus on the craft itself. And I used to be really nervous. A lot of times I call myself an awkward seller because I find it very awkward as humans that we just walk up to people like, hey, you have a problem. Let's talk about it. Like if I showed up to you at a food hall, at a brewery, wherever you are, and instead of being like, hey man, what's up? Like, do you like this beer? If I was just like, you have a problem, let's discuss, give me money for it. Like, this is very awkward. So I kind of lean into that. And something that my current team says is like, I'm a very relaxed seller, which I still don't necessarily identify as that because in my head, I'm still an awkward seller. I'm like, this is weird. But from where I was of a very nervous seller, like, is it okay that I'm calling? Is it weird? Some companies I've been at, there's certain quotas to hit. You have to dial this many dials. So here's the thing that's just automating and annoying everyone. And that used to give me a lot of icky feels. Now to be labeled by others as a relaxed seller, I'm like, that's because of this iterative process of that
Mm.
continual growth of learning from very strong and powerful sellers and following their best practices and using that. And, when you engage with your customer and then it's like, oh, wait, no, this is the human. I want to talk
Hmm.
to this human and I want to really get to know them. That somehow has ultimately made me more relaxed, and I'm having a lot more fun, I will say, as I grow. So it's not the one end goal. Also in sales, I would like you to celebrate every small win, but like as we know, like the second the next month hits, you're back to zero. So it's
You're
acting
back
like,
off to
oh,
the
I hit the
races. Yeah,
pinnacle. It's like you're never at the pinnacle.
guess
You're
what?
always
New
at the bottom.
quarter. New quarter.
Oh, God bless that corner. But no, like
Yeah.
I want us to celebrate the small wins without forgetting, like,
Yeah.
we're out here doing it day over day.
Yeah. But I love that like concept of continuous learning, continuous journey. And someone always taught me if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And I think part of that process too, what I'm getting from you is you're kind of learning your style and you're learning as you go of what works. It's to your point. It's not like you're going to go in and be like, can you help me understand your quarterly objectives and what you're,
No.
people are going to be like, hi, who are you?
But when you
So
first get into sales, right, everyone says, if you don't know this
yeah.
about them, if you don't know this, da, da, da. And when you don't have, a lot of people like, just enough to be dangerous. And they like throw you out
Mm,
on phones and stuff, and it's early on. And you have all of these absolutes being told to you because just open LinkedIn, absolute city, right? Because everyone has to have their stance so they can build their brand. So you have all of these absolutes and then you have people doing it for the first time and they're like, well, how do I get this info? I come in with a lot of ego that's really just masking my fear
mm,
from being here. And
mm-hmm.
I'm just, give me this info so I know what to do. And that's where I think that awkward seller thing came from, where I was like, let's just own up to this. This is weird. And through this journey, it is nice to be able, it's very nice that recently I've been hearing quite a bit how relaxed I am as a seller because I didn't even realize the growth that I had come over me.
Yeah, well, it's almost those like forced, inorganic conversations, which like make everybody uncomfortable. But I think even going and taking a step further is understanding, what are those key skills and qualities that a sales professional should focus on, especially if you're getting beyond your first year in the role. Tell us more, like, how can they continue to grow and evolve in the career?
Oh, you always grow. Every moment of every day. The world's changing. Whatever you thought worked yesterday, now if everybody else is doing it, your customer's beleaguered. They're truly they're tired. There was a moment there where everyone was saying, "Hey, does that make sense?" And all of a sudden everybody said it. Every single person said it. And I got to tell you, sitting in the buyer seat now, it's nails on a chalkboard unless
Mm-hmm.
it's an appropriate time. If there's one thing that's like someone asked you a question for the third, fourth time, and because your world is special, right? Many of us, everyone's like, I sell a complex product. Yeah, many people do, right? There's a world we're existing in. We're trying to explain these ideas. If there's a true moment of like, hey, if it makes sense, let's do these next steps, and you get buy-in that way. But I've had a few sellers that like, you ask a question, I say, oh, it's XYZ. Does that make sense? And you're like, cool. Yeah. So here's another quick question. Oh, it's ABC. Does that make sense? And it's literally like a tick. And I'm
Mm,
like, oh, so that's where I would say, yeah, you got to continuously improve because when you're not listening to your prospect, kind of getting annoyed because like, I'm not dumb. I'll tell you if it doesn't make sense. This is
mm-hmm.
a very simple thing. You said it's
Mm-hmm.
XYZ. Great. Yeah, of course that makes sense. I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
And that's the feeling. And I don't want my customer to ever feel like I'm speaking to them that way. So, in terms of like that continuous improvement, it's never forgetting. You can't just say, I love a customer and be done. It's how you show up every single day and communicate with them to help them feel valued. And so,
Mm,
yeah, it always changes. I just use Does that make sense as an example because there are many others that come up that just become kind of the hype thing. And not everyone's using it. There's so many sellers that aren't on LinkedIn. There's so many people that are lurking. So you don't know
mm,
what's actually fully happening out in the world. You make your best guess, but ultimately just listen to what the prospect and the customer is responding to. And then you say, cool, I need to tackle this. I need to remove that lingo from my language and add this piece
mm.
in.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I feel like sometimes in some cases they could be like filler words or it's like these things we come in and just knowing that, hey, let's have this conversation. At the end of the day, my goal is to create this type of experience for the customer. And I think by doing so, as you're continually evolving, it's listening, which it always seems like it's like the bare minimum. It's almost like this relentless in the basics that sometimes, we forget to just listen. And part of that, we can start to identify that, hey, look, we are using jargon that is maybe an internal thing. It could be a marketing or a sales thing, and being aware by listening so that you can iterate or, adjust, pivot, to be more effective. Again, at the end of the day, to create a positive customer experience. I love that.
Look at that. Yeah, it's all about that. It's that pivot. And I love back to the basics. It's think of like the moment when you were a teenager and your mom's like, are you listening? You're like, yes, I'm listening. It's like, yeah, but you didn't hear them. And it's that reminder where no matter how old you get, you have to be your own mom and ask yourself, are you listening? Like, are you actually listening right now? Because this is really important. Your customer is giving you gold. And it's understanding the gift they're giving you by just communicating to you. Because a lot of people hang up, a lot of people curse, a lot of people, when you're treated poorly, there's that. But don't forget, when someone's giving you their time, that is their most precious resource, and you want to value that.
I think sometimes too, like I know for me, I would get in my head and I would have my talk track. I would have my script and I would stay to my script. And it's so easy to just get into this like fixed mindset that I have to stick into this. But when you start to apply again, the goal, listening, I think you start to evolve as a person, but knowing that, and sometimes you can get in your head a bit, how can someone cultivate a mindset that encourages them to bet on themselves and seize opportunities that come their way, even as they're evolving, putting customer first, building that strong mindset? How does someone go in and seize those opportunities?
I mean, I'm going to repeat back to the basics, because if we're talking betting on ourselves in a sales context, you bet on yourself when you entered the profession, right? It's massive opportunity, massive upside, but it's a roller coaster. It is a very volatile, it feels like your value is associated to if people will talk to you and like you. It can be a very emotional thing. Now, as you progress and get a little further along in your career, it has less of value on, do they like me? Because the craft starts honing a little bit. But those early stages in particular, it can be very nerve-wracking when you're watching someone sit right next to you and you have to hit your quota and dial, but they're a great social seller and they're blowing out the number, but you don't really get that. And it's completely fine. It's some people are social sellers, some people are good cold callers, some people are amazing emailers. And other people, just they know how to network their way in and they use that, which I guess is kind of the social selling, but I'm thinking more broadcast social, that they come to them as opposed to like a network way in. Each person is going to find their strength. So the bet on yourself is you showed up every day. You continued to improve to get better, and you learned, I can do this. And I can keep doing it. And sometimes it's scary. And some quarters I'm displeased. And other quarters I blew it out. And that's an okay place to live in. But a salesperson is continually betting on themselves. We're seeing layoffs happen when they hit sales quite heavily, right? Like we're seeing this across the board, whereas we know like you need revenue in companies. So we don't need to get in that debate. But it's a betting on yourself and making sure that each time when you make that bet, show up for yourself too. It's where I'm really cognizant of the times when I've made a decision and I've told myself, I'm doing this. And then a lot of times I do like a little year-end review, a little OLD. I'm like, how many decisions did I make? How much action did I take after that? Because that tells me what I actually care about, that value that matters. Because I tell myself all sorts of stories. I don't even know. For a while there, I was like, I'm a runner. No, I'm not. Duns don't run. Not my thing. Uninterested. I would tell myself,
don't run.
Yes. I would tell myself every day. I even convinced myself I was doing it a little bit. I ran a half marathon. No, thank you. That's going to be a no. That's not me. But I kept telling myself that story. And then the action wasn't following through.
Mm.
It was so difficult because it's like, oh, like, this is just not my form of exercise. I really love yoga. I love hiking. I like lifting heavy things. I feel really powerful when I pick up a heavy thing and I drop it. Running,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, from what to whom? Like, it doesn't click in my head. So when you think of it in a selling context, I'm really customer driven. I'm not, okay, like, do you know what your customer cares about? How do you
Mm.
know? Do you know if you have any little verbal tics? You mentioned that earlier of like, is it a verbal tic versus a theme that we're seeing online that just kind of incepts our mind that we use? I'm really lucky that my undergrad degree is actually theatrical, scenic, and makeup design.
Mm.
And yeah, so I was in a theater program, and everyone had to do these acting classes and others. And I had a teacher, many theater programs, they're very worried about the language that you
Mm.
use. So you won't hear me use as many ums or likes, any of those, because
It's really good training.
it was great training because everyone would walk around and like be like, oh,
Yeah.
like, oh, and people would like write stuff down
Yeah.
and
You start
match it.
counting how many ums. Mm-hmm.
Every time. And then something interesting happened to me when I was coming back into like conflict negotiation work, where it was really unique to me that the value of a well-placed it does something. There's actually something that happens chemically in your brain with that vibration that hits.
Mm.
It also lets the other person know it's not a canned response. You mentioned a script. It's not a canned response. I'm like, how about this answer? So I actually have had to reteach myself to tactically put an back in. And I'm from Southern
Oh, that's
California, so
interesting.
a
Yeah.
well-placed like will never do you wrong.
Oh, no.
Like
Neither,
what?
neither will a Hella
No.
from California. So,
Hella, well, I'm Southern California, not Northern, so don't come at me with
okay.
that
Well, there
whole
you go. The battle of the two.
yeah.
Now, what I like about that as well is like one, as you're starting to evolve and you're betting on yourself, it's knowing thyself because it's so easy to see another rep who's becoming wildly successful doing insert here, networking. They're super social. And it's that constant comparison is the thief of joy. And when we start to compare, we become unauthentic to the superpowers that we were born with. And so
Yes.
it's kind of you're evolving. It goes through that continuous journey of how you start to own your own power. What was that point in your career that you decided to bet on yourself and what caused that?
It's something that it's been coming up recently quite a bit. I've been asked this quite a bit. Having this new role, a lot of up and comers will ask me how I got here, how I decided. And betting on yourself has been a big theme for me. It's the more I think about it, the more I talk through each moment. I really believe that that's something that because I had a beautiful childhood, I have lovely parents, educators in my town, and a phrase that my father said on repeat was, whatever your little heart desires. And, like, hey, can I do this? Whatever your little heart desires. Can I do that? Any question? And it seems so flippant. And I don't know if there was a conversation my parents had about, like, we're going to instill this in her. Or I think my dad, he's just a little cutie. And he just, oh, whatever. He just likes to say that. But the story I told myself was, I can do whatever. So when something wasn't going my way, when something in my gut felt really wrong, I said I want to be a teacher and I was focusing on that. I was like, this isn't it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, well, can I, like anytime that little voice, like, can I do it? Whatever your little heart desires. That's what I think of. So, we closed the round and my team here, the leadership team, but we closed it together, the four of us. We were in a room and, we all had a drink and we were like, okay, are you ready? And I just like laughed. I didn't know if stuff came out, but I was like, and everyone looked at me and I was like, no. Like, what do you mean? Am I ready? I've never led at a series. No. I said, but I'm going to do it. And it's that because that voice is always, it's not a can I will.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been told whatever your little heart desires. And so some people have a different hill to climb to get there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not the
I love
same
that
for
though.
everyone.
It started with dad and just these like positive words. It's like, yeah, I can conquer the world. The world is my oyster. I can, and having that in the early beginnings that it's like, there's no hill too high to climb. and bring it on. Bring it on.
Yeah.
Which I love that. It's a great mindset, I feel like, to start with, especially now where there's so many people who have advice. And you start to, you have to have that strong foundation. But how do you personally strike that balance between being open to this valuable advice, but then also balancing it with trusting your own instincts and your own judgment?
My gut is the thing that I'm left with at the end of the day. So that's it. I have been given advice before that felt bad in a sales context. It's like, well, that sounds like a lie. I'm like, well, no, it's not a lie, because if you have to convince me it's not a lie, that's the answer. My gut already told me that's the answer.
Mm,
We're not going to be doing that here. It is hard when you are a rep and a leader, whether it's a manager or a more senior leader, is telling you to do something that feels wrong. That is very difficult. The one thing that will endure is your reputation.
mm,
That will endure. So whether it is your manager, director, VP, C-suite that is telling you to do something, if your gut is like, this is wrong, it is a lie, it is harmful to the customer. I guarantee you, if someone on my sales team is telling the customer a lie, they're not blaming me, whether I told them to or not. They're blaming that rep. And when that rep goes to the next place, they don't get to bring that book of business with them because they have a reputation for being a
mm,
liar.
mm-hmm.
I'm on a convention floor, and if someone thinks I'm a liar and we're all hanging out, at a networking event, and then I come over and it's kind of awkward, and then you leave, and people are like, oh, what was that? I'm like, oh, she kind of lied to me about that. Now look what just happened. Popcorn.
Yeah.
So as best you can, always stick to your gut, always stick to what you know is right. Find that true north. Keep it clear. Keep it clear. Don't walk into everything like skeptical, like everyone's trying to lie. No, assume positive intent every time. Ask for clarity of anyone who's asking you to do something that feels icky, and really get down to, why am I having this reaction? Be really clear with yourself and then make the decision. And then know, like, this is your life. It is your book of business. It is where you are going. And if ultimately it's not the right fit because of that, if ultimately you can continue on there, but in a different way, that's fine too. A lot of us go really high level. It's do or die. There's never a gray area, whereas we know the whole world's gray area. There's very
So
few
true.
black and white. Yeah, and we go to these extremes because we're all just little bag of emotions in a meat suit trying to figure out life. And it's hard. It's hard. So just, try to ask yourself really important questions and stick to that true north.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good practical advice because, you are going to get that advice and you have to, in many ways, trust yourself. It goes back to owning, it leads into owning your power, but it's trusting yourself, knowing understanding your gut, and then knowing that ultimately your brand is a reflection of whatever the outcome is that you decide. So I think that's really helpful, and practical advice. Now I'm going to pivot slightly. I always love me some good fun facts, and I found a really fun one.
Great.
Just given your industry
Of
background.
me?
So no, not of you specifically. I didn't go that deep.
I was like, is
But I
this
did
like I'm on
find,
Jimmy Fallon and you found like some secret on me? I was like, oh no.
no way. I'd go the karaoke route. And we would just start singing
Okay,
and
good.
having like top chart
Party.
songs, although I can't sing.
Yeah.
So, I decided to cut that
Even
out of this
better.
podcast. Yeah. I did see something though. It was a report from International Renewable Energy Agency back in, I think it's 2019. And they said that women accounted for only 32% of renewable energy workforce globally. So what advice would you give to women who are entering or navigating a male dominated industry?
Keep showing up. If you care about it, show up. In a patriarchal society, you'd be hard pressed to find an industry that's not male dominated. There may be many women around. Check who the bosses are. Check
Mm-hmm.
who's profiting off all that work that the women are doing. So I just don't really even focus on the male dominated. I focus on showing up every day. It does hit me, like when you feel those things where you do feel alone, it does hit me. So that statement I said of just keep showing up, that is not to negate it. It definitely hits me, and I lean on my women friends, my women advisors. There are also many men I lean on in that, where they say, wow, I never even considered that. Like I was like, oh yeah, no, that's a standard That's completely, that's just what it's like. I'm like, I didn't even think. And I'm like, I know. But I make it very clear
Yeah.
because my goal, I was working with my executive coach the other day and she said something. She's like, you realize you're 2%, right? It's like, huh? It's like your position.
Mm-hmm.
You realize you're 2%, right? It's like, oh, okay. Okay. Great. And that doesn't necessarily, I'm not a like fueled, like, yeah, let's do it. What I'm fueled to do is to be the last first.
Mm,
That's the vibe for me of let's figure out. That's why I spend a lot of off hours mentoring up and coming women and people of color and folks
mm-hmm.
underrepresented. It's not that it's they lack access, they do not lack talent or power. That's
Right.
what it is. And I'm here to help be that voice and use whatever privileges I do have to bring them up behind me. And the renewable energy, the 32%, just keep going. If you like it, if you're passionate, be different. Go out and do that because we can fall into the cliches. Some little girl might be watching you and see that. You might inspire someone else to do that. Those are all really true. But I do want to revert back to the betting on yourself. At the end of the day, that gut, you're left with it. So if you
Mm-hmm.
didn't do it because you were fearful that, oh no, it's dominated, who cares? Who cares? It's all dominated by men. So just do it anyway.
Yeah. Well, to your
It
point too,
doesn't
I mean,
change.
no, well, and I think what needs to change is, the perspective. And of course, there are things that come up, but I love how you said it. You just show up. And yeah, sure, it is male dominant. I mean, if you look across IT or manufacturing or insert, it is male dominated. And I love that simple fact too of, okay, I'm still going to show up. That doesn't change the talent that I bring. It doesn't change, what I love and my passion around it. And even taking it a step further to say, I'm going to create a path. I'm going to be, I'm going to be the last, not the first, or, that saying that you had, and just continuing to show up. I am curious too,
If I
walking
cry
in
at
with,
night, yeah, I do. Sometimes
yeah,
I cry about it.
it'll be normal. If you find me in the closet crying with some ice cream, whatever, don't
It's
judge.
fine. That's what I mean by show up. I didn't say hi to who you are. I said show up. Sure, I cry about it all
Yeah.
the time. It's fine.
But then
I
that's why
cry
you
at
have the
commercials
community.
too.
Yeah.
Yes. Show me that Sarah McLaughlin commercial with all the dogs.
Oh,
Oh,
the
I'm in a
dogs.
puddle. So yeah,
Yeah.
I cry about business too. I don't care.
Yeah, well, embrace it goes back to embracing who you are too. And it is truly owning that power and then not being afraid. Like if you have an executive coach, if you have a therapist, if you have communities that you can rely on and lean on and learn. And,
Yes.
I mean, how do you feel like that's starting to kind of accept that and knowing and leading with that? How do you feel like that's changed your perspective now and how you show up?
How does it? I don't quite understand the question.
Having the thought of instead of like being a victim of like, oh, I'm in a male dominated
Mm,
industry and I'm
mm.
the only woman. It's impossible. And saying, yeah, I'm still going to show up. I'm still going to be me. It's something I care about. Changing that mindset. How do you feel like
Yeah.
that's helped you to show up even more as your true authentic self?
Yeah, I'm on a continual search to have a better day than I had yesterday. I want to find my most perfect day. And if I worry, if I stress, that only ruins my opportunity to find the next better day. And I'm not put on this earth to fear things. There's a lot of things to fear in this world. There are, and there are many things that do scare me. But I don't believe I was put on this earth to be continually scared and fearful about things. So that's why it's just show up. And even when it does hurt sometimes, don't let a bad sentence ruin a day. I fall in that
Mm,
trap all the time. You can have a rough moment with a customer. You can have a rough moment with a business partner or a leader for that. It's understanding, like, well, what's that going to do to me tomorrow if I sit in this pain and I let that live in
yeah.
my body?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to live that life ultimately. And I've fallen through that pitfall a few times. And it's not a fun season to live through. So I try to feel it as fully as I possibly can.
Mm,
I do not hide it. I do not do that to myself. I feel it all the way out and I move on as best I can with that knowledge. It's like adding another quiver to your bag.
Mm-hmm. Well, it goes back to you're continuously evolving in your journey and learning these things. And there's a new day. If you find yourself in the closet crying, eating ice cream, it's going to be okay. Take your moment, like even be in your moment.
What kind of closet you're in with this ice cream? I don't
It's a
think I've ever
very
done that
small
moment.
closet. It's because I have 3 kids, and I always tell people, like when you have kids, it's okay. If you find yourself in the closet eating ice cream,
That's
don't
fine.
judge. Keep it
That's
moving.
fine. That's
You just
fine.
keep it
Okay.
moving.
I was like, is there a closet I'm missing? Like, do I need a
Safe
closet?
space. It's my safe.
Okay, good. Girl, pop off. Hang out in your closet.
I
That's
mean,
great.
ideally, I would love the Sex and the City Carrie Bradshaw closet. If the Manolos are in there too, then, I'll take it. But,
It's a good closet. You should take it.
It's a good closet. Yeah. But I love this. So as we start to close out, in a world full of possibilities, what mark do you dream of leaving as a trailblazer for future generations of empowered women?
I really believe I was put on this planet to save it. Like the planet, I was here to save it. There are so many young people. There are so many folks my age and older that are doing really amazing things to save it. I truly hope that through kindness, I'm able to save the globe.
I love that. The world needs a lot more kindness, I feel like, in this world. And the work that you're doing to pave the way for others who don't have a voice, who don't have, whatever rights, I think it's making a huge influence every day. Lori, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, dropping your stories with us. And as we wrap up today's episode, let's remember that in supporting one another, we amplify our strengths and we break down barriers. So go out there, champion for your dreams, empower your peers, and continue to shape a future where every woman realizes her true potential. Until next time, we'll see you guys.